Today, you're going to take a crash course in AdonisJS. Before we begin, this video sponsors HelloSign, which offers an API that helps companies grow revenue faster by automating document workflows with a developer-friendly e-signature API that makes it simple and easy to embed secure and legally binding documents directly into your website. G2 Crowd says HelloSign's API is 2 times faster to implement than any other e-sign provider. You or your devs can send your first API call in minutes, and your app certification is always free, and you won't find an e-signature product with an easier path to implementation. All right, let's get back to it. Hey everyone, Gary Simon of Corsetro. So today I'm going to be covering a big topic that I've wanted to cover for quite a while, and that is AdonisJS. And this is going to be a crash course where we're going to try to tackle a project and learn it based on the needs of the project. All right, so it's going to be a CRUD-based project, which is create, read, update, delete. And instead of doing a to-do app, I made it a job posting app. All right, so first, what is Adonis? Well, Adonis basically touts itself as being a node.js framework, and it is extremely similar to Laravel PHP if you've ever used that. It's based on the same model view controller, or the MVC approach to building apps. So if you've ever used that, using Adonis is going to be very similar. All right. What's also great is if you start, using Adonis and learning that, and then the transition to Laravel, for instance, if you wanted to use that, is very similar. So just to show you the project that we're going to do, it's called Job Poster, and just people can submit a job title, description, and along with a link. We also have user authentication baked into here. So you can see we can log out, we can log in, and let me log in real quick. We also have validation. So if I just put in a half email, guess what? It's going to show us that. Let me log in for real. We can go to My Jobs. We can post a job. We can edit jobs and delete jobs and do all that great stuff. All right. So also there is a full 100% written tutorial that's going to be linked in the YouTube description. So I'm going to be taking some code from that and pasting it in from time to time. So you may want to do the same thing. I spent all day writing about 3,500 words for that written version of this tutorial. All right. So also today's question is, how much experience do you have with backend technologies? All right, let me know in the description. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is use our command line or your console to install the Adonis CLI, or the command line interface tool. And this will allow us to run a number of different commands, and the first one being to start a new Adonis project. So to do that, you're going to need node.js. If you don't have that, go to nodejs.org, download it with all the default options, and then you'll have access to the command npm. Of course, if you install that, reload your command line or console, and then you should be able to run npm right here. So what we'll do is run npm. We're going to put I for install, and then global. And that means that we're going to install this CLI globally on the machine, so we only have to do it once at AdonisJS /CLI. Now, I already ran this. It'll take a little bit of time to run. But once it's completed, then you can go ahead in wherever you store your website projects or your web projects. Mine's in the code folder, obviously. We're going to run Adonis new. And by the way, we can run Adonis help, and you can get access to all of the commands that you can run. All right, so Adonis new is one of those commands, and then just the name of the project. So I'm going to call this job post R, not post or, trying to be trendy there. So I hit enter, and we have this nice little output right here, and it doesn't really take that long. I shouldn't have to pause and, do a bunch of editing. There we go. See, that's all it took. So now we're going to do what it says in the last 2 lines. So we're going to cd into job poster. Cd job poster. And then before I run Adonis serve, I use Visual Studio Code, so I can run code period to open up the current folder here. Oh, and I need to update my Visual Studio Code. I'll do that later. And then I can run Adonis serve -dev. All right, so now if I hit Control and left click on this, this will show up in a new browser window right here, and there we go. This is our Adonis project. It's ready and up, ready to go. Very, very quick and easy to do. All right, so now what we want to, the first thing I'm going to focus on is the view. All right, so of course Adonis, as I mentioned earlier, is based on MVC, so that's Model View Controller. We're gonna just start tackling the view, and this really, you don't have to tackle the view first when you're building a project. This is just what I'm personally doing, and you may be wondering, where is this stuff coming from? This, all the HTML and the CSS and all that stuff. All right, so to figure that out, we're going to open up real quickly, go back to our code editor. We're going to hop over into our routes file. All right, so we click on our start folder and we'll see a routes.js file. And I'm going to hit Control B to get rid of that sidebar just momentarily. And you're going to see that we have this route.on method specifying just the root of our project. And that's where we're visiting when we go to this URL right here. All right. It's saying render something called welcome, just a string of welcome. Well, what that's in relation to, if we Control B and go back, if we go to resources, views, inside the views folder, we have welcome.edge. All right, so Edge is the templating engine that you use, and you could just put regular HTML. So think of it like an HTML page, except where you can add in variables and you can do Adonis specific things like this. All right, so this is where the HTML resides for that landing page. We have our section here, we got a logo, title, and then all of the text that we have showing up, of course, right here. All right, so you may also be wondering, what is this? All right, so we have these double curly braces, and this is referred to as interpolation, and we have this weird thing called style, and this is an Adonis-specific function that makes it really easy just to import CSS files. All right, so instead of writing out link and then putting, your location to your style.css file, you can just do this instead. All right, so style right here is in reference to a file name called style.css, and that's located, if we hit Control B, within our public style.css file. So that's where all the CSS is coming from for that landing page. All right, so basically, let's focus on the view and structuring out how our views will be situated with a navigation and a content section. So we're going to rename real quickly our welcome.edge to index.edge. All right, and then we're going to create a new folder called layouts inside of resources. So we click on resources, click on the new folder button, and we're going to call this layouts. All right, so inside of here, I'm going to create a new file in the layouts folder called main.edge. All right, so main.edge is going to be responsible for storing the head information and the basic layout structure that we're going to be using across multiple pages of this app. All right, so this will help us avoid, duplicating, stuff like this in every single edge template that we use. All right, so what we're going to do is inside of main.edge, we'll just go ahead and just copy this stuff right here. All right, and so we're just going to make a couple adjustments right here. So we're going to leave our style. We're also going to have a section. So this is a new, sorry about that. This is a new Adonis specific function that we can use that allows you to designate what are called sections and give it a name in the first parameter. The name I'm going to call this is just going to be extra CSS. You can call it whatever you want, but these sections need to be on their own line by themselves. And what this is going to allow us to do is further on down the road when we have like forms, which isn't going to be in the home page, we can include an extra line of CSS, another CSS file right here if we wish. You'll see how this all works momentarily as well. Our title, we're going to go ahead and put this right here, and I'm going to put in its own section. So it needs to be on its own line right here. So we're going to put in another section called title. That way the title is dynamic and we can specify that in each of the edge templates. All right, and then finally, this is also where we're going to include our navigation. So we're going to start off with a header. Just enter this instead. And we're going to have a fictional logo. So that's just going to go to / if it's clicked upon. We'll say ID is logo, and then a name, which is job poster. All right, and then we're going to have a nav, not a mav, a nav element with an unordered list and an li element and an a element that's going to go to / and then the first one's going to be jobs, and that's just going to be taking them right to the main page. And then we're going to hit Shift Alt and the down arrow key just twice, and we're going to have login and sign up. And this is going to go to login and, you guessed it, sign up. All right, so that's it for this main edge page. So we need to go back though and adjust our index area right here. So the index needs to, let's just get the whole thing. I'm gonna hit Control+ just so you can see things a little bit bigger. All right, so up here, we're gonna designate which layout that this edge template is going to use. All right, so we just created one in layouts called main.edge. So we put @layout, which is a function that we can use, and we specify layouts. This is the folder, but we don't put a /, we put a period. And then the name, and we don't have to put @edge, it is inferred automatically. All right, so that's the layout that we're going to use. Now we have to ask ourselves, what sections exist within this layout template right here? So we have a section here, a section here. Oh, and then it might be helpful if I put the other section right down here, because we have our header, but we need another section, and we're going to put this section and wrap it inside a container class. All right, and this section will be called content. This is where all of our other edge files are going to be placed, the main bulk of the content for the HTML. So let's save that. So we have 3 sections, one called content, title, and extra CSS. We don't have to specify these if we don't want to. So in this case of this index, we're not going to be using the extra CSS. All right, so now the way we designate the content for those sections is like this. So we put section, the name of the section, title, and of course that's coming from right here. This is named right here. And so this content, and we put end section, whatever goes in the middle here is going to show up right here in the title tag. And of course, if you know any HTML, you will know then all we put is just straight up strings here. So job poster, this is going to be the title of this page, post your jobs. All right, good. Now, let's specify the next section, and that's going to be content. All right, so for this area, we're going to put in an H1, and we're just going to say all jobs. So the home page is going to list out all the jobs that anybody submits, basically. All right, and then we're going to have a div class job container. All right, and then inside of there, we're going to have a div class of blank. And this really probably didn't have to include this, but it was just there just so I can style it, make it look like a placeholder image or something like that. And then a div of class job-info, and then an H3. So for now, we're just going to hard code some stuff in here. This will be dynamic shortly. Future job description can go here. All right, and that's it for now. That's all we want to do. All right, and now in order for us to get this to work, because we renamed our welcome.edge, we're going to go back to our routes file. So if you hit Control-E, if you're using Visual Studio Code, you can just type in routes and hit enter instead of hitting Control-B and going over there. What we'll do now is we're going to change our render or our render from welcome to index. So now if we go back to our browser and we refresh, oh no, I just completely screwed up. So cannot render, and I'm going to leave this in here just so we can figure out, learn how to, when these inevitable issues come up. You'll be seeing this a lot, especially if you try to go on your own after this. So cannot render layouts / main.edge. Make sure that file exists. Okay, so we have an issue here. So this is layouts main.edge, and that's why this needs drug into views. Sorry about that. So now if we come over here, refresh, there we go. We can't see anything because, well, it's hidden inside the content, but here's all of our stuff. So now let's real quickly focus on the CSS, and I'm really just going to paste this in from the written version of this tutorial, which you can find in the top links here in the description in YouTube. All right, so what we'll do is go to our style.css, Control B, and I'm going to just copy and paste from the written version of this tutorial, like I said, and you'll find it near the top of the very lengthy written tutorial for this tutorial, right here. So I'm going to paste all of this in. So again, this is coming from here, the website courcetera.com, and that's all I did. I just took this stuff and pasted it right in there. And I really don't want this to be, if I really focused on just, describing all the CSS, this would go beyond the scope of this tutorial. So you should definitely know CSS already in order for this to work. But if you save that and we refresh, there we go. Much better looking. Awesome, awesome stuff. All right, so now we're going to switch things up. So now you know a little bit about the Edge templating system. Even there's not much to learn, obviously, but what you do know, you can do a lot with already just by structuring layouts and all that stuff. But now we're going to talk about databases. All right, so so basically Adonis 5 will support the following databases to store your data. It's let's see, SQLite, MySQL, MariaDB, Oracle, MS SQL. There's a few others, I believe, as well. But for this tutorial, we're going to focus on using MySQL or MySQL. And this will require, I've always said MySQL for the longest time, by the way. This will require installing MySQL on your machine if you plan to develop locally. You can, of course, use like databases as a service if you wish, but we're going to keep everything on our machine for this. So I'm not going to be covering how to do that to install MySQL. So go to Google and learn how to install it. There's a link. Let's see here. Right here is where you would end up downloading what you need to download. It's at mysql.com/downloads. And just figure out how to get it installed on your machine. And after you've done that, you're going to go ahead and visit a file here in the root called .env. All right. So by default, it's setting us up to use SQLite. So we're going to change that to MySQL right there. Also, we can see we have some other things like the port and the user's root. We're going to leave that there. Password's blank. For the database, we're going to change it from Adonis to job poster. And that's the only two lines we're going to change right here is the DB connection and database. All right, so let's save that. And now what we want to do is, unfortunately, here on Windows, if I try to do the next command with Visual Studio Code running, it won't work correctly. So it throws out an error. So what I'm going to do is just close this out, and I'm going to get up a new console here. We're going to go back into CD code / or / job poster, and I'm going to run this. We need to install MySQL. So Adonis, and you could use npm to do this, by the way. We're going to use Adonis. Install MySQL. All right, so this may take a little bit of time, so I will fast forward this. All right, so now, as you can see, it did install right here. Things look a little bit different because a couple of times it failed to install, and so I had to completely restart the command line and console and rerun this twice, actually. So yeah, I don't know what's up there, but it's ready to go now. And so now at this point, we're going to use the MySQL command from the command line in order to hop in there and create the database that we referenced in the env file. So again, you're going to need to install MySQL and make sure that you have access to it from the command line. So you'll know you will if you run this command. We're going to say user root, and the password we're going to leave blank. When it says enter password, just going to hit enter, and now we're ready to rock. So all we have to do is one command line, which is, or one command rather, which is create database and job poster. All right, so now we can next that. All right, so now when you install MySQL, there is something that's called the MySQL Workbench that comes with that. So it's right here, and if I simply refresh everything, we'll see job poster is right here. Empty tables, there's nothing going on in it. It's just an empty database. All right, so now what we'll do is go back. All right, we'll do that later. And now we're going to talk about migrations. All right. So again, migrations, if you're coming from Laravel, you should understand what these are already. But if not, these migrations are found within our database migrations folder right here. All right. So this is what they look like. Automatically, when you use the Adonis CLI to create a project, it's going to create this user.js file and this token.js file. All right. And so basically, what these contain are an up and down method right here and here. And what they allow you to do is to control basically when it concerns creating, modifying, and dropping or destroying or deleting your tables in your database. All right. Theoretically, you could use MySQL Workbench or PHP-MyAdmin or whatever to create your table structure, but there's a benefit here in using this, and you'll see kind of how that works momentarily. So with these two migrations, they actually haven't been ran. These are just files sitting here. We actually have to use Adonis to run these migrations, and what they'll do is create a users table right here with all these columns. So it's going to create a users table with a username field, an email field, a password field, also an increment field, and a timestamp field based on when it was created. Same thing with token. So what we could do to run this is we'll hop back here, and I'll just type in Adonis and migration run. Oh no. Oops, Adonis migration run. Don't put a space there. All right, so now it said it's migrated both of these files, and we can check here. You can check in either using the MySQL console command, and you can learn how to explore your database, if you want, by going to Google and searching that. Or if you have this, it's a little bit easier. What we can do now is just refresh everything, and we'll see under tables, we now have an Adonis schema table, and this is basically responsible for storing records about which migrations have already been ran. So it also has our tokens and our users table right here, and of course this is completely empty at this point in time. All right, so let's make a new migration with the Adonis CLI for storing our job posting data. All right, so let's come back here, and what we'll do is we're going to type in Adonis make migration jobs. All right, so we're naming this jobs plural simply because that's what we're allowing people to post with this fictional app. All right, so we're going to use create table, and there we go. So now it's told us that we have this new file right here. And if we go back into here, we'll see our jobs schema right here. All right. So what we want to do is if we run this now, if we run that same command about running the migrations, it'll just create a jobs table with just in increments in timestamp field. That would be worthless, right? With our job, we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we're going to allow people to specify as a part of this job posting? we're going to keep it simple, obviously. And the first thing we'll do, obviously, is like a title, right? So a type of string, that's going to be the column type. The name is going to be title. Now I'm going to hit Shift Alt and the down arrow key just a few more times, and this one's also going to be a link, like the URL to the full job listing, listing or whatever, and then a description, and then also we're going to have an integer of the user _ ID, and it needs to be in this this sort of convention here, user _ ID, because we're going to create a relationship, which you'll discover what that is later, where it ties to whoever posted this job. It's going to tie their user ID to it automatically, and that's all we need to do. That's all we need to do. So now at this point we can go back to our command line or console here and just type in Adonis migration run. All right, so now we can verify it in our Workbench app, refresh everything, and we have our jobs table right here. All right, so we have our columns, we got our ID, which is the increments, we got title, link, description, user ID, created at, and updated at. All right, so good stuff. So now let's talk about, in MVC, let's talk about the M, which is model. So now that our database has tables that have been created, we need to create a model for handling our jobs table and the associated data. So let's use the Adonis CLI to create a new model for our jobs table. And you'll see how this all works if you're kind of confused, like, and what the hell is a model or whatever. You'll see just by example here. So Adonis make, now we've used this make command to make a migration, but this time we want to make a model called job. All right, and we want to keep it singular and uppercase. So now it's created a new folder called models and then a new file called jobs. So if we go to Control B and we go to app models, the models is already there because it generated a model for the other stuff like the token in the user. You can see there's a bunch of stuff in here. You don't really have to mess with this user.js just yet. We will be hopping in there in a bit, but right here is the one we just created, which is job.js. All right, so what we want to do here now is nothing, essentially. This model is going to allow us to communicate from our code in our controller coming up shortly to the database, all right? And you'll see how this is used. But right now, we don't really have to mess with this or touch it or do anything. So now let's talk about the controller. So MVC, we have C controller. So next we need to define a controller that's responsible for using this job model right here for creating, altering, and retrieving jobs from the database. All right, so let's use this Adonis CLI. Once again, as you can see, it's pretty prominent. Adonis, we're going to make what this time? A controller, and it's going to be called job controller. And it's going to be for an HTTP request. All right, so now we have a new folder called job, called HTTP, and then job controller right here. All right, so the first thing we want to do is get access to that model that we just created, which is job right here. So to do that, oops, I just hit Control N by accident to create a new file. Don't want to do that. So to do that, here in job control at the top, just outside of the class, we're going to create a constant called job, and then we're going to bind it, and we're going to say use, and we're going to point to the folder of app models and job. All right, so this is our model right here. All right, that's what's going to allow us to insert and update and delete our jobs and perform the CRUD operations, essentially. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to create a decent amount of code here. And what we want to do with this is eventually we're going to use the routes file to connect it to this controller, so that when somebody goes to the home, the / directory or the app root, basically it's going to run this method right here. So we're going to call async home, and then this right here is called the context, and the context gives you a bunch of different things that you can specify comma separated based on the needs of this particular method. In the case of the home, we're not allowing people to post data to it. It's just going to be reading data for now, and that's it. So we only want access to the view at this point. So inside of here, we're going to say, and this is, by the way, just a temporary thing, I want to create a job post. So when somebody visits this app, the homepage, it's going to create a job post automatically with static data. And then we're going to remove it just because I want some data in there. Plus, it's going to show you how you actually create or submit data into a table. So we'll just say create a job here. And we're going to say constant job equals new job. All right. So this is the workflow for creating or inserting new data. And so in CRUD, this is create right here. So we're going to say job.title, all right, because remember we have this constant job. So now we're going to reference it and then specify the data that we want people to be able to insert into the job. And if you remember, based on this job schema, we have a title, link, description right here. The user ID, that's something that we'll deal with later. So we have job title equals my job title. Now I'm going to hit Control, or not Control, but Shift, Alt, and down. We're going to change this up here. This is going to be a link and a description. All right, so my job title, let's take the link, just say, I don't know, google.com, and then my job description. That's all. Now the final step is to run await job save. All right, the actual job save is going to execute and take this information and place it into the database. So this is an important step. Now let's fetch the jobs right here. So we're going to say fetch a job, and then we're going to say constant jobs equals await job.all. So this is going to get all of the jobs. So if any of this stuff is confusing, you want to have a better understanding of it, definitely check out the Adonis 4 or 5 documentation. I don't think they have 5 specific yet, but it's going to allow you all the different types of queries that you can perform in order to get data in a specific way. Right here, we're just saying get all of it, and we don't care. That's it. All right. So then after that, we're going to say return view. Remember, this is where we're grabbing this from the context, and a render method, which will take in an argument of which view. So if we hit Control B and look at our views here real quickly, if I can find it, resources, views, we have an index.edge. That's what we want to do. So we're just simply going to say index right here. And then we're going to say in an object, a jobs property, and we're going to say jobs to JSON right here. All right, so we're basically saying when we create this, when we call the index edge view, we're going to pass along to it this jobs right here, which is going to take all the stuff from the model. It's going to take the model to communicate to the backend, to the database, and say we want all of the jobs, and this is how we define it. We're referring to it here as jobs, and then we refer to this constant right here, and then run this method on it to JSON so that we can work with it in the view. All right. So now let's go ahead and save that. We're going to go back to our routes file, and now we're going to modify this. Instead of on, we're going to say get, and that's going to allow us to change this up so that in the get parameters, we're going to have a job controller, which is our controller, dot home, and that's the name of the method that we use right here, async home. All right. So hopefully it's starting to make a little bit of sense, but if not, don't worry. We're going to go through muscle memory a lot and do this several times just to build out the app and as a part of a necessity. All right, so now what we'll do is we'll go to our browser, and with any luck, we refresh this. Oh, well, that's because right now we didn't modify the edge template to show, you know, the actual data being pulled from the database. But if we look here and we refresh and we go to our, let's see here, right there, we'll see that we have my job title. It's already inserted into the jobs table. We have our Google and my job description. There we go. Awesome stuff. So now let's go back to our edge template for our index.edge. And now we're just going to modify this. All right. So we have a way to iterate through an array or an array of objects, and that is at each function. And we're going to say job in jobs. So jobs right here is what's being passed from our controller. All right. So right here, that's what that is in reference to. So let's go back here and index. All right. So job in jobs. That's all we have to do. And then we're going to end each, because this is all the stuff that we want to repeat for each job, right? So the job container and then the job title. And then we use interpolation here and we say job.title. All right. And we're going to put a link here. I forgot to do that. And this is going to be the href is job.link. And then also the job.description. Just like that. Save it, go back to the browser, and it's going to create another one because remember, every time this gets visited, we create a new record. So now we have two. Awesome, awesome stuff. So real quickly, let's go ahead and remove that from our job controller. And now we simply fetch a job when somebody visits the home page and show them all. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk a little bit now about user authentication. Before we can allow users to submit jobs, of course, they need to be able to have an account or create an account and then log in and all that good stuff. All right, so fortunately, our users table has already been created because when you use Adonis, the CLI, to create the new project, you'll see it creates the users table already for us. So now we're going to revisit our routes file. Remember, that's Control-E, and then just type in the name. And we're going to add two more lines. So what we're going to say is route.on method. And we're going to use the on method because we don't need to control this from a controller. We don't need to pass data to the login and the sign up page, essentially. So we're just going to say route on sign up. We're going to render auth.signup. Now auth is a folder that doesn't yet exist in the views folder, but we're going to create it. And then also sign up is going to be a specific edge file. Then we're just going to replicate that with Shift Alt and down, and then to say login auth.login. Very, very simple stuff. So save that. And now we're going to go ahead and create that folder here in the views file, or folder rather. It's going to be called auth. And then we're going to create inside of auth a login.edge and also a signup.edge. All right, so inside of the signup.edge, we're going to real quickly go back to our index, and we're just going to copy, I'm going to take the whole thing, who cares? So we're going to go sign up and just paste this in, Control B. All right, so now we have our layouts.main that is going to use, our title. So this is a sign up, so we'll just say join now. All right, and then we'll say right here, join now. And we're going to get rid of this stuff. All right. So now we're going to have a div class of job container. And inside of here, we're going to have our form. Because obviously people are joining and they get to fill in a few form fields. And this is going to be our form. So the action... right now, we'll just leave it like that, and then we're going to say method equals post. All right, and then we'll end that form right there. So what I'll do to save time is I'll just type out all the stuff for just one of the fields, and then we'll replicate it, and I'll paste it in and show you what we're doing. So what we need to do first is a username. So that's part of the information that's in this users table. There's a username, there's an email, and a password. All right, so what we'll do is just create a label for equals username. That's going to be the name of the field, and we'll say username here. And then beneath it, we're going to have our input. Oops, I put my hands in the wrong place on the keyboard. Input type is text. The name, very important field, need this. It's going to be username. The value here. All right, so inside of these quotes here, we're going to put in interpolation. We're going to use a new Adonis helper function called old. All right, so if there's an issue with the validation, maybe they didn't put in a password, but they did put in an email, then this here, this old function is going to persist that data so they don't have to fill everything out again. So old, and then it takes in the name of this field here, which is username. All right, just like that. And then also the second parameter of this is a default value in case there wasn't one there. So we're just going to leave it empty like that. All right, and then at the end, right there. All right, and then for validation, we're going to say if has error 4. All right, and this is another Adonis helper function. Username. And we're going to end if right here. So inside, we're going to say, we're going to have a span tag. Inside of here, we're going to say the get error 4 username. Now, of course, none of this is going to work because we have to set this stuff up in terms of the validation and all that, but we'll get to that shortly. But that's basically it. So this is handling persisting the user input that they had here in case the page needs to be reloaded if they didn't satisfy validation requirements. And also it's handling displaying the data right here. So we're going to do this for the same thing for the email and the password. All right, so I'm referring to the written version of this document, and I'm just going to paste in this stuff right here. So this is the same thing. So we have here the label for equals email. That's an input type of email, name email, value equals old email. And really, it's just you could just take this, copy, paste it, just make a few changes to the name values here. Essentially, this is an input type of password. It's all the same stuff. All right, and then finally, we'll just have down here a button, and the type will be submit. Very important there, and then join now. Now, the last thing, there's two more things. We have the action. All right, so the action, we're also going to use another Adonis helper function. So inside of here, we're going to put in route. So this is telling us where to submit this form. So which route? All right, well, the route is going to be user controller dot create method. We haven't created that yet, but we will. And that's it. All right, so then we also need to do one more thing, which is another helper function called CSRF field. All right, and so this basically is an alias, and if you view the HTML after this, it's just simply takes this and makes it an input hidden field with a token that ensures that this request is coming from this server. All right, otherwise, if you leave this out, it's not going to work. You'll see an error. All right, awesome. I think that's all good. Now, what we're going to do is create a new CSS file, and this is going to be called forms.css. All right, so let's go down into public, and we're going to create forms.css. And once again, I'm going to refer to the written version of this tutorial, and it's not too many rule sets, but I'm just showing it right here. And it's just structuring these different form-related fields right here. All right, so we'll save that. All right, so now I think one thing that we need to do in the signup.edge is we need to specify real quickly that extra section. And I forgot to do that. So we're going to put @section, extra CSS, and we're going to end section. And then we're going to put in style forms, which is the file that we just created. All right, so now let's go back and let's refresh and let's go to sign up. awesome stuff. I have automatic form filling going on here. That's why there's some stuff here, but that is it. All right. So now we're going to visit the routes file, because remember, if you submit this, guess what? This is not found, this the post route here. So what we can do is go back, and we're going to hit Control B. We're going to go back to our routes file once again, right here, and we're going to add a route post under sign up, just to keep them together. Route.post to sign up. And we're going to make this one user controller dot member create. That's where we're submitting the form to. And then we're also going to use a validator. And this is something new. We're going to put create user. So we're going to create a validator called create user. And what happens here is when you attach this or you chain this onto one of these routes, before it ever gets to this method, it has to go through this validator first. All right. So that will ensure that, you know, the form that's coming in, the form data that the user has specified, is of the right type and satisfies, you know, all the requirements that we've set forth in this create user. So the way you do that is we do it through the CLI, and we can go here real quick. I'm going to say Adonis, not Adoins, but Adonis, and we first have to install the validator. So at AdonisJS /validator. All right. And once it's installed, we're going to head on over. As you can see, it's going to tell you what you need to do. We need to open up the start app.js file and put this in this array. So it's start app.js. So let's go back here, Control B, start app.js. And here's all the current providers that are already provided here. Right, so this is the one we have to add right there. All right, so now that we've gained access to these validators, we can now gain access to a new command that wouldn't have otherwise worked if we didn't install this first. And that is in Adonis make validator and then create user. Great. All right, so that's in validators and app validators right here. So let's see, there we go. Create user. All right, so we have a get rules and it returns an object, and this is where our validation rules are to be placed. So we have to ask ourselves, when somebody's creating a new user account, what fields are they submitting? Well, the first one is a username, and we're going to say it's required. So you simply specify the value as being required, and we also want it to be unique because you don't want, you know, the same two people with the same username. So we're going to say unique, and it's going to be unique to the users table. All right, so let's just replicate that a couple times. We have an email. This is also required right here. And then it needs to be the same, essentially, validation rules. And then also a password, which is simply going to be required. All right, and you need to put commas after these, obviously. All right, and then also we're going to specify messages. So get messages, and we're going to return an object, just the same as above. And we're going to say, in the case of any of these being required, then we're going to say this. All right, whoa, now. And then we're going to put in through interpolation brackets, field is required. All right, and you'll see how this works after I describe it here in a second. The other thing we have is unique. So we're going to say, we'll make it different. Wait a second, and we'll say the field, whether that's email or username, already exists. So what this is doing is this is saying, in the event that the username, email, or password has required on it, then it's going to say, whoa, now, field, and the field would happen to be this value right here, like username, is required, or email is required, or password is required. All right, and then finally, we're going to create a fails method down here. And this is going to allow us to flash in the session a message to the user, and the message up here is right here. So what we do is say this.ctx, which is short for context. In the context, you can see we have all these other things. We have session that we can use with errors. We pass in an error, and then we say flash all. Then finally, we're going to return with this context the response, and we're going to redirect them simply back to wherever page they came from if they end up failing. So it's going to show them a message and make sure that redirects them back. And that's the create user validator. All right. So now let's go back to our project and let's try submitting this. Well, let's make sure real quickly. There we go. I had to refresh. We could see, because of my auto-filling stuff, the email wasn't filled out. So it says, well, now email is required. Awesome stuff. So, of course, if we go like this and try to submit, it's going to say, well, now the username is required. Awesome stuff. So now we need to create a controller that will allow us to issue commands to the predefined user model, which interacts with the users table in our database. So we're going to head back over to our console here. I'm going to say Adonis make controller, and this is going to be user controller for HTTP requests. All right, so now we're going to go back to our user controller here, or not back to, but basically right back into, and we're going to, again, remember up here, we had to get the model for the job. Well, we're going to get the model up here for the users. And of course, this model was already created by Adonis for us. So this has to be changed to user, and this will be user. All right, so now we're going to say async create. And from the context, this time we're going to request the response and then also the auth. All right, so inside of here, what we're going to do is first go ahead and create the user. All right, so const user, and remember, because we're using that validator, this only gets called if the data is valid, if it's unique, and all the fields are required. So we're going to say const user equals await. Here's our model here, user.create. So we're going to create a user, and we're going to say request, and this is coming from here in the context, only. And we're saying only because the request actually provides with it the CSRF token. So we don't need that. So we're just going to say we only want the username, and this is in reference to, sorry, I can't talk, in reference to the form data that's being submitted of this form field. So one was called username, the other one's called email, and the other password. All right, so now after that, we have our user here. So then we can say await auth.login, and we'll say user. And then finally, and that will log in the user after they've been created, which is handy, obviously. We're going to return the response, and we're going to redirect them back to the home page from the sign up page. All right. Awesome. So now what we can do is give this a shot. Let's go ahead and see if creating a new user actually works. So let's refresh everything here. I'll just leave it at DACHE, and I'll say Gary at GarySimon.net. Put in a password here. Join now. There we go. Now we don't know if we're already logged in or signed up, but we can check in the database to see if this user was created. So we can go back to users here, click here, and there we go. We have our username is Dake, email, and all that stuff, and our hashed password. So let's go ahead and modify and work with the logged in status up here and change these links based on whether or not a user is logged in. All right, so to do that, we're going to head on over to our layouts and our main.edge file. All right, so all we have to do, and this is very, very simple, it's dead simple, I love it, is we're going to leave the jobs link always there, no matter what. So after here, we're going to put in logged in. So if a user is logged in, then it's going to show whatever is in here, and then else, and then end logged in right here. So this stuff, I'm going to copy that and then just paste it right here. And for this one, if the user is logged in, this is what's going to show. So I'm going to put post a job right here, and we're going to change this to my jobs. And then we're going to have a log out. And logging people out is absolutely simple, as you'll see in a second. All right, very simple. So now if we save this and we go back, refresh, there we go, jobs, my jobs, log out. Now let's go ahead and make that log out option work, and it's very simple. So our routes, we're going to create a route.get log out. Second argument or parameter will be a sync, because there's an operation that will take time. We're going to say an auth in response from the context. And inside of here, and by the way, we don't need to handle this with a controller, with a method like this other stuff right here. We can do this all just in this routes file. So we're going to say await auth.logout. And we're going to return response redirect to the home page once they log out. So we save it, we go back, and now let's refresh real quick. We're currently logged in. When we log out, it's going to go back to this page, but this is going to change up here to the other stuff because we logged out. All right, so now let's create the login page and make that work. So let's go to our login edge page, and of course it is blank. And what I'm going to do is simply, it's almost exactly similar to the sign up page, just with a couple differences. But I'm going to refer to the written version of this tutorial to simply paste it in, and then I'll go over it real quick about what's happening. So again, we have our layouts.main here. We have our section of extra CSS. This is all the same, and we're just simply changing the title to login from sign up. Right here we say login now instead of sign up. And then this time we're going to flash a message if there was a login error of some sort. You'll see how this comes into play. And then we have our form just as before. The action this time is going to user controller instead of create. It's going to login. So momentarily we're going to create this login method. The method's post, of course. We've got our CSRF field. And then this time we only have two, because all you need is your email and your password to go into. And this is all the same stuff. So it's just the email and the password and then a submit. That's all that's different from this signup.edge page. All right, so now let's go to our routes file. And we're going to add the following route right here. So under route login, we'll say route post. And we're going to say login. And we're going to say user controller.login. Validator login user. All right. So when somebody wants to submit to the login page, it's going to call a login method, and we're going to have another validator called login user. So what we'll do is go back to our command line here. We're going to say, I'm going to go up here. Make validator called login user. Oh, that's okay. I give ourselves an extra capital there. No big deal. Let's go back up here. And in our, where is it at? The validators. There we go. Let me rename that real quick. And our login user, rename that part and this part as well. All right, so what are our validation rules for this? All right, so real quickly, just to save ourselves a little bit of time, I'm going to paste these two values in here from the written tutorial. All we have is an email, right, which is required. It should be in the format of an email, and then password, and it's going to be required. Also, same thing as before with our other validator, we're going to have a messages. So in messages, we're going to return required, because that's the only things that we're requiring here. Whoa now, blah, blah, blah is required. You could also do this for email as well and have a custom one if you want, but I'm just going to leave it as is. And then also, once again, we're going to have the same exact code as before for the async fails method. And then just save it. This is the same exact stuff as our other create user down here. All right, so now in our user controller right here, we're going to add the following just underneath our create method. All right, so this is going to be async login. From the context, we're going to get the request, the auth, the response, and the session to flash data. And then in here, we're going to grab the email and password. This is through called destructuring from the request.all. Then we're going to do a try catch. All right, so it's going to try this first. We're going to say await, and then we're going to say auth.attempt the email and password. Of course, this, once again, this login's only being called after the validator has approved it to do so. And this line right here on 17 allows us to attempt to log in with that email and password. If so, it's going to return in response. It's going to redirect them, we'll say, to the home page. Now, if there's an error, we're going to say session.flash, and we're going to say in here in a object with a property or a key called login error, we're going to say these credentials do not work. All right, and then after doing that, we're going to say return, response, redirect, then back to the login page. Or you could say back as well if you wanted to. All right, so now let's go ahead and give this a shot. So if we go to login, we'll see we have this stuff here. Let's first see if the validator actually works. Awesome. Well, now the email is required. So now let's see what the user was. I believe I used the email Gary@GarySimon.net and this particular password. There we go. Logged us in awesomely. Let's log back out though and go back to login, and we type in Gary@GarySimon.net, and I'm going to put some other password that is not the right password. There we go. These credentials do not work. Awesome, awesome stuff. All right, so now let's talk about actually posting jobs. So now that we can create the users and we can log in and we can handle all this stuff, we know how to, do all that. Let's talk about these posting jobs. So let's create a new Edge file or Edge view here in our views folder. So we're going to go back to our views. I wish I can drag this damn thing up. Anyhow, we'll go back to our views. And what did I just do? Oh, they're up there now. We'll go right in here, and we're going to create a new file. And we're just going to call this here jobs.edge. All right. And real quickly, I'm going to get the initial stuff pasted in here. So again, very similar. We got our layouts.main. We have job poster, post your job. So this is only going to be accessible to people who are logged in and they want to post a job. And then we're using the same extra CSS section with our forms CSS that's going to be added. All right, and then we're going to talk about posting a job. So again, I'm going to copy and paste just from the browser here, and there's going to be quite a bit of stuff. So pasting this in. So what's happening here? So first we have our section content, post a job, and we have a div class of job container, And we're saying that same thing before in the other view file. We're going to flash a message if it exists. So if flash message, the actual, we named it in the controller message, or will shortly, and it'll show up right here in a span. Then we have our form, and we say a route job controller.create. All right, and we have our CSRF field token here. And then we have the same stuff as before. It's the same format. We have a label, input, and then any errors, we show them. So the first one's called title for our job title. All right. And then the next one is the link URL. And again, all this stuff is defined in that the migration file in the table structure. And then also the description down here. Same exact stuff, not any different. So next, we need to do something new, which is to create a relationship here. So if you recall, if we go back up to our database migrations right here, we have a reference to user ID. We're going to create, we have to first go over here to our models. So right here, user. And just after this class user extends model, we're going to put in a new method called jobs. And this is a relationship. We're going to return this.hasMany because a user could have many jobs. So I definitely recommend checking out the documentation on this because there's a lot of different types of relationships. And this one is used obviously common where one user can post multiple things. So app models job. All right, so that's how that works. And this is going to, again, allow our controller to automatically append also the currently logged in user's ID to new job postings for us. All right, so we're going to also create a new validator for our jobs. So going back, again, a lot of muscle memory being used here. So this is going to be a create job validator. All right, so we're going to head on over there to our validators, create job. All right, so again, I'm just going to paste in a few things, a few of these key value pairs. So the first one is going to be title and link. Now I'm not putting the description. We're going to say the description is not required, so we simply omit it. And then also our messages. Hold up the whatever field, the title or link field is required. And then also the same old async fails error right there. Same stuff as before. All right, now let's open up our routes. So Control E routes. And we're going to add 4 different routes here. And 3 of them are going to be a get, and then 2 will be a post. So route.get, we're going to say we're going to post a job. All right, and then we're going to say job controller dot user index. All right, and right here, this is going to be job. This is basically for CRUD functionality: create, read, update, date, and delete. So for post a job, we want people to be able to delete their jobs. And then we put this colon ID because this is going to be dynamic in the URL parameters based on which ID of the associated job in the jobs table that they want to be able to delete. This method will be called delete. This will be edit ID. And this will be edit. And then finally, this is going to be a post for creating. Actually, no, for a post for updating, rather. We already have the create thing here going on. So now this is going to be update. All right, so update ID. And this is going to be update. And we'll pass in a validator as well here. And this is going to be our create user validator. All right. So now we'll save this. And we're going to head on over to our job controller, which is up here. All right. So we're going to say we're going to paste in, well, not for now. We'll paste in a little bit. We're going to say async user index. That was the first one we're calling. And we're going to say we're going to get the view from the context and auth. All right, and we're going to say we're going to fetch all of that particular user's jobs. All right, so before we're getting everybody's jobs. In this case, we just want that particular user's jobs. So the way we do this is const jobs equals await, and then auth dot user jobs fetch, and that's all that it takes. And that's where that relationship comes important. And then we're going to return the view. We're going to render our jobs, and we're going to, in the object, we're going to put jobs, and we're going to bind that to jobs to JSON. Same thing as above, essentially. All right. Okay, and let's see if we go back here real quickly and we log in. All right. This doesn't yet work because this post a job doesn't, we don't have the view part done for that just yet, I believe. And let's finish out the methods, though, by the way, real quickly for this area. Because again, if we go back to our section right here, our routes rather, you'll see we have, we just did the user index. We got delete, edit, and update. So let's do that. So let's see here. Nope. Job controller. All right. So for the next section, we're going to say we're going to handle creating them. So async create, the request, the response, the session, and the auth we're going to get from the context. And inside of here, we're going to say const job equals request.all. So this is the form data. And then we're going to say the const posted equals await auth.user.jobs.create. All right, so simply right here we say the title is going to be the job.title, and then also the link, and also the description. All right, then we're going to session flash, and this is to display the message of your job has been posted. All right, and then also we'll return the response, redirect back to where they were. So that'll keep them there at that post a job page. And then let's also create a delete. All right, so async delete will be response we're going to get from the context in session and parameters. All right, because we have URL parameters here. So we say we create a job constant, and we're going to say equals await job.find, and then we're going to take the ID from the parameters in the URL. So if we go back to our routes, you'll see the ID is defined here, all right, as a wildcard here. So now we'll go to Control E, go back to our job controller. And after that, after we have the job that we're trying to find and delete, we're going to say await job.delete. Very simple. And then again, session flash. So I'll just copy this off here because it's getting a little bit redundant. So right here, we paste in session flash, your job has been removed, and then return response redirect back to that same page. And then we have simply two more. I'm going to paste this one in. This one's simply to edit, and this is just going to find which job ID that needs to be edited, and then return the view and send in that job information to populate the form data. We haven't yet created this, the view for this, but we will momentarily. And then finally, we have update. All right, so if a user wants to actually update. So once they get to the edit page and they submit a form field, this is a method that's called update. And we get the response, request, session parameters, and we get the job from the parameter ID. And then we say the job title is request all title. All right, this is the new title that a person is specifying, new link and new description, and then we simply save it. So that's how you update in CRUD here when it comes to Adonis. Then we're flashing a message and redirecting back to post a job, or simply, post a job would work here. Back would simply put them into the different view. That's why we're not using back as we are up here. All right. After that, we're going to go ahead and save this. Now, when I refreshed this before, it was a blank page because I forgot to save the edge file. So make sure you save that. And here we go for the post a job. So you could submit a job, route not found, post null. Okay, so got to make sure we look into this. And yeah, I did. This should be separated out because this is just showing a view. What we need to do here is take this, replicate it, let's shift alt down, and this is going to be simply posting to post a job. And then this is create, and we use the same validator for creating and updating. Obviously, we're dealing with the same data. I put create user, and this is create job. Silly me, this stuff is bound to happen, unfortunately. So now let's go back to here. And I was screwing around with this, trying to get it to work, but now we can see the validation works for posting a job. So now let's put in an actual job, JS developer, whatever.com, and my DESC for subscription. So submit it. Your job has been posted, and now it's automatically showing up underneath here. Obviously, I didn't spend much time on formatting this correctly because I wanted to get it done quick enough. But as we can see now, we have our edit and delete. So let's just try deleting. Your job has been removed, and now it's been removed from the database. Let's do another one. My job title, URL, and we'll say description. All right. Now, edit is not yet going to work because we haven't created the actual edit page. All right, so let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to create a file in our views here. So this is just simply going to be in our views folder. We're going to call it edit.edge. All right. So again, a lot of the same stuff. So again, we have our main layouts main, edit your job. We have our custom CSS there. And then the edit section is actually very similar to the same form for creating a job. So I'm going to paste this in. Again, I'm getting all this stuff off of the written version of the tutorial at Coursera.com. And so here, there's just a few different changes. First, we still have this flash message up here. And then also, the one thing that's different is in our action, we have the same route helper function. When we're saying job controller.update this time, and that's where this form is submitting to. And then we're saying we're also passing to it the ID of the job that we want to update. So that part's real important. Make sure you put that in. Still method post, CSRF field. And then we have all the other stuff as normal. So just the one thing that is different, we are specifying the value as the job.title instead of old, because people, when they arrive at this edit page, they haven't submitted to it already. We're just getting this from the returned job object that's coming from our job controller for this edit method. All right, so if there's an error, show it. And then same thing for the URL, all over here, the job link, and then also the description, and then we submit it. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and let's see here. We're going to, sorry, I'm scrolling through here just to make sure this is all, I'm getting this all. yeah, let's try to edit. This should definitely work now at this point. So let's do a quick job refresh, edit. There it is. It's showing in, in the edit ID is 4. Let's just remove the Q from here. 2 and 2. And there we go. The title actually didn't get updated there. So your job has been updated, but this part has not. All right, so what's really strange here is I went back to here to edit, and I think perhaps maybe I just didn't refresh it because I made no changes, but now it is actually updating exactly how I want it to. And I've made no changes, so maybe that was my bad. Hopefully it was. All right, and so that's how we deal with editing. So let's talk about real quickly our routes real quick. So if we go to our routes, we can see there's a lot of kind of code duplication here. So post a job, post a job, post a job. We can use what are called route groups to kind of minimize some of this stuff. So the way we can refactor this is we can stick things in a route group. So what we'll do is put route.group. All right, and we'll take this, delete that, and put this here. And then we're going to put all this stuff here. All right, and I'm going to stick this outside of here for the post a job create method. And then we're going to put on a prefix method where we simply prefix part of the route name, the beginning on it. So post a job. Now we can remove this, and that. All right, and that should now work, and it's a little bit more clean in this manner. Let's also just put this right here just to organize things up a little bit better. All right, and that's it. Of course, when you make a change like that, you should obviously go back and make sure that everything still works. My new job, my URL, and description. Submit it. Here it is. Of course, if we go to jobs, it's going to list all of them out at this point from any user. Let's go back here. We can edit it. My new job 3.3. There it is right there. Delete it. All works awesome. So really, we just scratched kind of the surface, but we went over a lot of the core fundamentals. There's still things that could be done in terms of optimizing the app and kind of making it a little bit less verbose. For instance, if we go to our controller here, our job controller, so job C here, you'll see we're doing the same sort of thing every time we want to fetch a job from the parameters. We have this right here, we have this right here, we have this right here. That's a little bit verbose, obviously. So what you want to do, again, we're already really late, so I'm not going to be covering this, maybe in another video, is do what's called middleware. All right, so if you go and look up middleware in the Adonis documentation, or check out one of the other courses I'm going to link here in the description, you'll find out how you can use middleware to remove this piece of code and instead place it very similar to, if we go back to our routes, how we have a validator here, which gets ran before the method gets called. Well, you can also use a middleware function, and you can use the Adonis CLI to create middleware. So the command is Adonis make middleware and then the name of the middleware that you want. So in this case, it might be to find a job from the parameters, and then you would use that new middleware file and reference it here. Obviously not on this one, it would be on these, and you could actually just chain it on all of these at the end, like find job right there. And then that way you can get rid of some of that code. You don't have to do it that way, but it's obviously cleaner that way. All right, so there's a lot of different, small things that could be covered, after this video. But for now, I think this is a crash course enough in and of itself, and you've already learned a tremendous amount that will really take you far. Just understanding how to perform CRUD operations and user authentication. Another thing that you can do, by the way, is if you want to protect some of these routes, for instance, no person should be able to go to anybody's ID and edit. Obviously that would be kind of a bad thing. So you could actually attach a auth right here, chain it at the end, and now people wouldn't be able to visit those links or those routes either. So, all right, that is it. All right, guys, so hopefully you found that helpful. And, when it comes to crash courses, things can be a little bit confusing after the fact. But if you go back through it, you look through your code, and most importantly, you try to build your own project, you're going to start to understand everything's going to start to click like that. All right, so make sure you answer today's question, which is how much experience do you have with backend technologies? Let me know in the comments, subscribe here, and I'll see you very soon.